Episode 3 of the BTB Project. I'm excited today as I get to interview one of the strongest, most inspirational young athletes I've ever had the opportunity to coach. This young lady has received 5 brain surgeries, and the 5th one caused severe loss of coordination and stability in the right side of her body. She's been featured in Tennis Magazine Heroes Edition called Fighting Spirit, also the Denver Post article, How to Beat a Brain Tumor Twice. Founder of Peyton's Hope, an endowment fund that helps treat and cure brain tumors through Children's Hospital. At the age of 17, she performed a TEDx talk in Vail called Will Courage Survive, which has hit almost 7,000 YouTube views. An avid photographer, you can find her snapping photos on the Western Slope, in Colorado, and in the Mountain States. Peyton Palermo, welcome to the BTB Project.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby.
Welcome to the BTB Project, designed to empower listeners to identify their why and to live their best lives no matter the circumstances. My name is Coleman Gerhardt, a former athlete and motivational coach. I've had the opportunity to inspire thousands through my story and help accomplish what they are built to be. You'll be encouraged by each and every episode, and let's get into it.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living out my dreams.
What an exciting day as the BTB Project finally kicks off with a guest. So welcome today, Miss Peyton. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
No, absolutely. I know that it's been quite a journey to get to this point for you and I. Could not think of anyone better to have a conversation with, to have the listeners get to know you a little bit. And, you know, really the purpose of the BTB Project is a lot of boxes that you've been checking your entire life. So I'm excited to get into it today. Well, first and foremost, I never thought that I would start a podcast. It was one of those things that kind of came up through people, you know, giving me advice and encouragement based off of my skill set. So maybe a good place to start is, could you tell me a little bit about where you're at today and some of the kind of, you know, goals you have for the future?
Yeah. Right now, I'm 24, and I am back home in Denver working at a full-time job in sales. I love it, and I'm super thankful for it. And I'm also trying to figure out what is next for me, if that's Denver or somewhere else, and if it's photography or continuing to be in sales or marketing or something like that. And so I'm just kind of in this zone of waiting and seeing and working hard.
Excellent. No, that's a good outlook. I have to flash back because to give some context to the listeners on how we met. So I was, you know, coaching tennis full time in my past life at a club that I ironically grew up very close to where that club is. And I was on the court one day and I saw a girl and her dad hitting some forehands, and it looked like something that was not very fun at the time for you.
No, it probably wasn't.
So to put things even more into context, I know we're going to be talking about some tennis today, but I can absolutely relate to sales. Transitioned out of full-time coaching and got into sales and still coach part-time. But I just am curious, based off of, you know, what you've learned in your childhood and high school and in college, what are kind of some tips that you have that allows you to have success in sales so far?
Oh, I don't know. Sales is hard. You have to be, I guess the word is persistent. Get a lot of doors slammed in my face. And no, I don't go door to door, but it's repetition and going in there and just being yourself and being like, I can help you, let me help you. And then just having the self-discipline to do what you're meant to do and what you were hired to, because there is a lot of freedom in sales and it's hard. And sometimes I find myself, oh, I need to be working right now,
Right.
instead of in the car zoning out. And so I think it relates back to my childhood because, I mean, I started playing high-level tennis by the age of 10, and that took discipline and to be full-time in school and have friends. Like, I couldn't do anything if I didn't have discipline, and the same for this job.
Yeah, it's amazing how one of the biggest, most often things said to me when I am applying for jobs or am part of any sales organizations is they love former athletes. That if you can endure what you do in your respective sport with training and staying organized and putting in the work, that a lot of those facets can cross over into sales. So I find it interesting because going back to that moment when I first met you, it looked like it was really hard to hit a forehand on that particular day. And, I want to dive deeper into, if you remember, I know it was a long time ago, but I would love to hear your perspective of where you were at on that particular day and what you were trying to overcome.
Yeah, I don't remember that exact day. I have to be honest, but I do remember that season. And in that season when I met you, I was just trying to get back to playing tennis again to the level that I was at before. And my forehand was the biggest challenge that I had on the court. And so that was the main focus, and it was really ugly. And I got you to help me figure it out. Yeah, that I was just kind of just there pushing through, trying to figure it out, and I had actually no idea what I was doing. That's what I would say was that moment.
Right, and at the time, believe it or not, I knew a little bit about what you had been through being connected in the Parker tennis community and, understanding that, you were training at a tennis academy locally. And as you mentioned, refining your skills and getting your junior ranking up to, a place that it's never been before, and you only wanted it to keep going up. Can you tell me about that moment when you got the news that you've already gone through several surgeries as a young child, and you get the news that the tumor came back? Can you maybe walk me through what that news was like and what you thought would happen after the last surgery?
Yeah, to give you a little backstory, I was actually doing a speaking event at the Children's Hospital the day I got the news, and I had intentionally scheduled an MRI checkup during the same time so I could hit two birds with one stone. And it was just, at that moment, an annual checkup. Like, I was just a box to be checked, and I did the MRI, and then I got the news that I had grown back, and then I had to speak. And it was really hard because there was a lot of emotion. But also, I had been through it before, and I came out almost completely normal and started kindergarten a week later and walked out completely capable of doing anything. And so I kind of thought the same thing was going to happen, and I never really bothered to think about the complications that could come in the future. And I also, like you said, I was getting my ranking up, and I was training every day, and that's all I cared about was my state championships and my tournaments coming up that could define that number that I so badly wanted. And so I just like got the news, said, okay, this is something that I needs to deal with, but then I can go back and do what I've been doing.
Right. No, I appreciate you walking us through that because, I mean, at that point, how old were you?
I was 12.
Yeah, and I think about, my past and some of the things that I've shared on previous episodes, and there's no 12-year-old that needs to hear that news, let alone have the ability to talk afterwards to a large audience. So I think at that moment in your life, you were learning resiliency pretty quick. It's even hard to put into words or to fathom, but tying back into where you are now, I think that you had to learn resiliency quickly. And to kind of mesh our stories together, I know why you were pursuing that junior ranking and wanting to play tennis at a high level, because you had desires to play Division I college tennis. And it's interesting because I started playing tennis when I was 14 years old, much later than you did. And I did not have near the coaches, my dad was pretty supportive in my tennis, and my mom enjoyed watching me play, but she was, kind of from a distance. And my brother didn't totally love when I was playing because that was the only sport that I could beat him at. But at the end of the day, I was able to play college tennis and accomplish a lot of the goals that I believe you wanted to do as a player. So what I find interesting is that moment when I first met you and we started training together, that you had a lot of respect for me for what I did as a player. I had a lot of respect for you for your resiliency and your ability to overcome, because those are things that I can't teach. And I knew that the training that we were going to be doing was going to be tough. And it was all based off of the goal that you wanted to set. But I think it's amazing how much kind of our lives cross paths in a crazy way. And I know that you and I got to sit down a few days ago before we hopped on this podcast, and shared a lot about what we experienced as a coach player relationship, and also what we've experienced doing life together. So that leads to my next question here is, what has life been like after college? It is a fascinating time to be a student. And there's, so much that I'm learning as a dad of, a guy in high school, my son in high school, and then, my daughter's, growing up way too fast. And I think of my college time back in the early 2000s. What advice do you have for college kids and people coming out of college knowing what you know now?
Yeah. Well, I do have to say this. I didn't graduate. I have a year left, and I didn't graduate because of a multitude of reasons, but the main one is that I could not pass math. And I actually will say I could pass math, but I chose not to because of the work that would have to go in, and I didn't see the payoff for that work in the long run. Because when I was in college, I absolutely loved being there. I loved the people I met and the friends that I have made. I also love learning. I learned how to sell. I learned marketing. I did switch my major like 4 times. So I learned a whole bunch about different things, and you can't get that anywhere else.
Yeah.
But when it got to the nitty gritty, do I want this degree? I said no. And that was because my passions in life and what I wanted to do in the future did not require me to have that degree. And that's different for every single person. It just kind of depends.
So, to make you feel a little bit better, I did not graduate from grad school. I got all the way through the program, had to do my dissertation, and this was after I had my surgery to remove the tumor from my back. And because of complications with the surgery and how far along I was in the program, the school would not allow me to take a semester off to recover from the surgery. So I, at that point, was no longer on scholarship, was paying for grad school out of pocket and trying to finish. And they failed me on my dissertation because I did not have a compelling essay, and the quality of work was not what was to be expected. So to this day, I have however many credits to have a graduate degree. And because I didn't pass one test, I don't have a piece of paper to show for it. And to your point, going back to passion, can you guess how many people have legitimately asked to see my college degree in things that I'm pursuing with my passion? Can you guess how many people have asked me?
Probably zero.
Zero. That's exactly right. So this is not a message to don't go to school. I think it's a message of, yeah, I'm sure that there might be a time and a place where you would want to go back and finish what you started. But the life lessons that you learned, the way that you inherited skills that, to be quite honest, not all those skills happen in a classroom. I think that that's really cool that you're able to do that. And when it came to those skills, I know that you had a lot of other influences outside of college that you were participating in. And, one of those is stemmed around your faith. But can you maybe walk me through how you got introduced to Young Life and what that piece of your life has been to you to this point?
Yeah. So I grew up in a church, and I went to church all the way till I was 10, and then we stopped. So I had a base of faith, but it was never really mine. And in college, I transferred to Western, and I knew one person going to that school, and I went to a basketball game by myself, and this guy was like, "Hey, come over here." And I was like, looked around, and I was like, "Me?" And he was like, "Yes, you. Who else would I be talking to?" And so I walk over there, and I'd met him the day before, but he introduced me to now what I would call all of my best friends. And I met this girl. She was crazy beautiful and awesome, and I was like, wow, she's way cooler than me. And she invited me to something called Young Life. That was the next day, and I said, sure, what is it? And she said, it's called Club, and we just go and have fun and talk about Jesus, but it's really nothing big. And so I was like, okay, I'll go, because I don't know anybody. And then I went home, and I called my dad, and I said, hey, do you know what this Young Life thing is? And he goes, yeah, I was in it during high school. And I was like, okay. So I went, and I fell in love with the community and the people, but in return, I fell in love with Jesus, and I started going to church up in Crested Butte, Colorado, every Sunday, and it turned into me helping out, and then it turned into me leading Young Life,
Wow.
for still going to church every Sunday and having a faith of my own. And through my faith, I've met so many people and mentored so many girls that it's been life-changing. And now I have a different perspective on life even what I did when I was 14. And it's been really cool.
That's awesome. I think that was one of the aha moments for you and I was when you found out that I was also associated with Young Life, and very similar story. I, had a counselor that encouraged me to go check it out, and I had a few friends in high school that were also part of it, but they were my guy friends, and the primary driver of attending Young Life was there was cute girls there. So that, was selfishly probably the main reason why I went in the first place. And it turned into that same curiosity about Jesus. I grew up in a Catholic home, so pretty regimented on Sundays, but there was really no substance or meaning behind it. I just kind of went through the motions with my family. And I haven't been to Crest Butte, but I went to a Young Life camp in Buena Vista, Colorado, and it was one of those weekend getaways, and they have that point of the getaway where you basically go out on your own on the campground and have 15 or 20 minutes of silence. And so I was on top of this rock on this cliffside as the sun was setting in Buena Vista, Colorado. And I just remember that moment of like finally letting go of, trying to be in control. At that point, life was about as chaotic as it could get. And I just kind of, let him take over. Right. And it was a pretty cool moment. The fact that you got to mentor young gals, I mean, being a dad of daughters, there's gals today that need mentorship just as much as there is, guys, or, young men that are trying to navigate life. So what a cool coincidence. And are you able to even today still find ways to give back in that?
Have not recently been involved in Young Life. I know there are ways that I could. Right now, focusing on what my faith looks like outside of college. And that's where I am right now. But I do go to small groups every week with my friends. And it's honestly, it's called Alpha, if listeners know what that is. It's been around forever. And it's something that is just a refresher for me, but I also get to hear other people and explain my side and my view to the new beginners of faith. And so that's my ministry. Like I'm not leading that conversation, but I'm in it.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm not familiar with Alpha, so I definitely will be checking that out myself, and glad that you and your friends are still able to find a way to stay engaged. When it comes to your friends, I know you said that you have a pretty close friend group that met through Young Life. There's always this kind of cliche growing up, because we grew up ironically in the same place, the same town, of having lifelong friends. And I to be honest with you, when I was growing up, there's not a lot of people from middle school or high school that I still talk to today. So I'm just curious, based off of, childhood friends or, folks that you met growing up, do you still maintain those relationships as well?
From high school and middle school, not really, honestly. I have one best friend, met in first grade, and she is still my best friend today and lives here. But that was because she went through it all with me.
Yeah.
And there's a bond there that really can be broken. Like she helped me walk again. Went through all 7th grade together, and she slapped my hand every time I was writing with my left hand because she wanted me to get better with my right hand. And then
hopefully I never slapped you, by the way, when I was teaching you tennis.
No, you didn't.
Okay.
I would be so mad at her that I would slap her back, and
I got it.
Yeah. No, but I would say like I found my my tribe, I would say, in college, in Young Life. And we were a pretty small group, and we just became so close. And as I look back, I think the reason for that would be our faith. Our faith allowed us to be extremely vulnerable with each other, and being vulnerable with each other meant that we could call each other out and pull each other higher when things got tough, or if we saw something in someone that wasn't right. And having years of doing that together allowed us to still become close even today. And like that group of friends, only like 3 of us live in Denver and the rest live around the world.
Wow.
And we still keep in contact and see each other at weddings.
Nice.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting what you just said about keeping each other accountable. One thing that I've been really interested in recently when it comes to what we can do to, motivate and keep ourselves accountable is this concept called pattern interrupt. Meaning in life, you go through and you have your routines, you have your moments of making good decisions or bad decisions, and being able to recognize those moments of bad decision, or, when you feel anxious, or, anything outside of feeling ideal, right? And being able to catch yourself, disrupt that pattern, and then proceed with a pattern that allows you to feel more positive and, to stay in alignment. I think that that's cool. And I highly suggest anybody listening to have an accountability group, right? We are a byproduct of the 4 to 6 people that we hang out with the most. And if you're trying to improve in a certain aspect of your life, put yourself around somebody that hits that part of their life out of the park. Or, if you feel like, you're excelling at something and can help a friend accordingly based off of what you're excelling in, to kind of lean into that relationship, right? So I think that that's pretty cool that you guys are keeping yourself accountable by kind of pattern interrupting each other to get better. That's a mouthful there, but nonetheless, strong friend group in today's day and age is huge. So I'm glad that you have that. As I mentioned, we both grew up in the same town. Do you miss any part about growing up in Parker? It's changed so much over the years with how many people live there and, all the growth and things like that. But is there anything that you really miss about it?
I would say no. But I grew up in the back of Parker, so a lot of land, and I do miss being there because it was slower paced, or at least felt like it. And I do miss our country club because that was like my home. But anything outside of that, no, I don't miss it, and I don't hesitate to say that.
Excellent. I can agree. My high school experience was not the greatest, so I tend to stay away from Parker when I can. A lot of people that knew me in high school that see me today, most of them, barely recognize me or kind of have to do a double take when they see me or whatever. So a lot of those people weren't very nice. So I try to put on my smile and take the high road, but it certainly isn't easy at times. But yeah, it's just amazing to me how much it's changed and how much it's grown, and certainly good feedback. So I want to chat a little bit about, obviously you weren't able to play college tennis, but you were able to play high school tennis. And part of my coaching background was to be heavily involved in high school tennis. And even to today, I just love giving back to a high school kid, no different than some of the things we've talked about with just how important it is in that, aspect of life. And all of the moving parts that kids have to navigate just to be a mentor and an influence as a coach is really cool. Can you tell me about your high school tennis experience? And I know that kind of crosses over with a lot of the training we were doing, but maybe walk me through a day in the life of our training and what you were trying to accomplish as a high school player.
Yeah, I think going into high school, my dream was still to play college tennis. I don't know. I trained to make varsity with you.
What time did you train?
5 a.m. And yeah.
Why did you train at 5 a.m.?
Because that was the only time I could.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, sort of.
So if I were to say it's when people aren't watching is when you get really good, how would you respond to that, knowing what you were doing at 5 o'clock in the morning?
I told nobody that I was doing that. I mean, I think if I told them I was doing it, they would ask why and just be like, that's ridiculous, because that was the childhood I had. Those were the friendships, and I got nothing out of them. But I don't know. I think training at 5 a.m. set me up for success in the day, but also those hard moments where I had to get up at 4:30 and be on the court 30 minutes later shaped my entire future. Doing the hard things that you absolutely don't want to do, but you know you have to, and is a necessity to get towards your dreams, and actually getting up and doing them propelled me forward so much more than even I knew at the age of 14 to 16.
It's amazing to hear you say that because, one, it's humbling to know that I was just a small piece of that moment of encouragement to help you propel forward. But what's interesting is a lot of that training that we did, I did for the better part by myself growing up. That was my outlet. I always believed that, you have so many minutes, seconds, hours a day, and everybody's trying to, we'll use tennis as an example. Everybody is trying to improve and get better. And I remember coming across a stat in relation to college tennis. And I think I came across this when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And that stat was based off of every active tennis player in the United States that wanted to play college tennis. Only 1.6% of them would play Division I. And so I kind of developed this almost like an alter ego of thinking like every day, how am I 1.6%? Every decision I make, every training opportunity, and just like you, I mean, I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning and drive to Boulder to do hitting sessions because that was the only program that I could find that, quite frankly, got the training in early enough to where I could carry on the rest of my day and still go to practice in the afternoons and things like that. So one thing that I always try to do as a coach that I'm so appreciative that you learned from and that you're running with today in adulthood is I never, ever want to tell somebody to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. And those early mornings, as much as they suck, as much as it can be really challenging, and to be quite honest, there were some moments where you were a little bit challenging in the morning.
I'm not a morning person, okay? I'm horrible.
There was a lot of practicing of patience and trying to empathize and understand you in those moments. But the thing that I think always resonated with me is you never gave up. You showed up and you never gave up. I'd love for you just to kind of speak into, where that led your high school career. Because I know that, you wanted to play college and you kind of realized towards the tail end of your high school career that might not happen. But did you see the improvement and maybe some of the goals that you set in high school come true?
Yeah. So, I did not play college, but in freshman year, I tried out for varsity and did not make it. I can't really explain to someone how much that hurt. I ended up swinging. So I played half of my matches varsity, half of them on JV, one, because we had 5 JV teams.
Why did it hurt? When someone told you no, why did it hurt?
It hurt because it was a no towards one of my dreams and something that I had been dreaming about for a long time, and I worked my ass off to get to, even being there. And so I knew that the girls that I was trying out against didn't work as hard as me, and that rejection was like amplified. And I also thought I deserved it, and I think everyone else around me thought I deserved it, which sucked even more knowing that. But that no, I'm very thankful for now, because it made me better and better, to where I was playing varsity in the next year, the 2 years after that, and got some more no's during that time. Yeah, and my high school tennis experience was like, I'm very thankful for it. I loved it because I love the game, but it's super hard.
I appreciate you sharing that. It's interesting how many times you heard no and how that ties back into sales, right?
It's true.
Being able to understand that a no might lead to a yes. And I think your attitude towards those coaches, as much as it hurt in that moment and as much as they might have not realized how much that goal meant to you, for you to have that perspective now that they actually helped you is really powerful. One of the most powerful moments for me as a coach was when I had an opportunity to go from being your coach to coaching against you.
That was fun. That was weird. Honestly, I had a hard time with that.
And, at the time I was coaching the girls tennis team over at Regis Jesuit, and you were at Legend High School and accomplished your goal of playing varsity tennis. And I had a lot of emotion in that experience, and I know you did too. But do you mind sharing about lineups that day and what we were able to celebrate?
So if you guys know, introductions for varsity tennis are very formal, I would say, but each player is introduced with their year and position on the team, and both sides. And during that time, I think we were introduced first, Legend, and then Regis. But each player from Regis gave me a rose. It was very emotional, and I didn't really comprehend what had happened even till today. A little bit. I was just like so shocked, and I also shocked my coaches. A
lot of the moments that I've been able to have as a coach these special moments always tend to happen in the background. It's usually on a court, not much of an audience, and it's just this amazing moment of improvement and overcoming and just awesomeness that happens. And on that particular day was an opportunity for tennis to be kind of second fiddle to what's really most important in life. And in my opinion, the most important thing in life on that particular day is that you not only accomplished your goal of playing varsity tennis, but we accomplished our goal of never giving up, of persevering, of being, inspiration to whether it's a teammate or me for other coaches, me talking to my team prior to that match. We had a hard time that year with kind of, community and coming together. When I shared your story to them about what life could have been like, it allowed a lot of people to reflect. And having the girls give you a rose was a way just to recognize all of those 5 a.m.s, all of those moments of no, right? And I'd probably put it in top 5 emotional moments in my life. Peyton, even to today, I'm always like, how in the world am I capable of doing something like that? How am I capable of helping somebody who let's be honest. The reason why I believe you and I started working together is because you were in a situation where physically you weren't able to continue the training that you were doing. You didn't have someone step up and say, well, let's look at this different and I can still help you. And it's crazy to me to know that all of these like uncertain moments in life or difficult circumstances that I'm scratching my head as I'm enduring them growing up would ever be a safe place for someone like you to come with the things that you were trying to overcome and just trying to find someone to relate to. And I think that moment in that lineup was just that, a celebration of you, of what we accomplished together, and look at how it's propelled you forward. Yeah, it's really cool. And
It was awesome.
I think the neat part of that is, obviously you finished up high school and you went on to college. And it was shortly after you went to college that I had a situation where my dad ended up getting really sick. And I had such a hard time encouraging him through that process. And I remember, my dad always loved hearing about stories of people that I've helped on the tennis court. And he had heard your story. And at the time, I believe that you had some wristbands that...
I still do if anyone wants any.
There you go. That said the words, be strong, fight hard, dig deep. And I don't know if I ever told you this, but there was a time when my dad was recovering from being sick where I thought I was going to lose him. And I had a hard time encouraging him. Usually he was the one that was always encouraging me, right? And I remember one day going into the rehabilitation facility that he was at, and he was pretty bitter and stubborn at that point because of the medications he was on and the pain he was in. And I just remember walking in, and I gave him one of those bracelets. And I didn't say anything else to him. I gave him that bracelet, and I walked out. And for the next almost 2 years, as he was recovering, he wore that bracelet every day. So what does it mean to you knowing that as much as your coach, I've been an inspiration? What does it mean to you to know that you've been an inspiration?
I have a hard time acknowledging that for a couple reasons, but the main reason is that it kind of happened by accident in my mind, because what happened to me was obviously not my fault, and the reason why I overcame it and wanted it so bad was because of a sport, and it was all I knew. And so I did it by accident. And then having opportunities like giving my TED Talk and being the Children's Hospital champion of 2010 and being in Tennis Magazine, like none of that really registered to me, like why I was doing it until college. Like I knew I had a story to share, but it was for me all about tennis. And now it's totally not. And I figured that out. But it took a while, and being an inspiration is now, it's hard for me to tell people and embrace that praise. And but I'm trying.
So it's funny. I mean, before we hopped on this podcast, you knew that I was asking you some questions, and one of those questions was, what is your greatest accomplishment? You told me off air, I don't know how to answer that. And it's funny how you are answering it. And I want to dive deeper into that TED Talk. At that point, you're 17 years old. I will definitely leave a link in the podcast description to the TED Talk, and also some various other links that we'll cover here with your endowment. But walk me through that experience.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I was asked to give a TED Talk. One of my family friends had asked me, and he was on the board for TEDx Fail. And I remember sitting with my parents and them asking me if I wanted to do this, and I said, yeah, sure, I would absolutely love to. And at that point, I wasn't a stranger to public speaking and sharing my story, and I thought it was going to be just another did not know what a TED Talk was. when I said yes, which for reference. And so when I got further talking to my family friend, who ended up coaching me through the whole process and writing the speech, I learned what a TED Talk was, and I was like, wow, this is a lot more serious than I had let on or thought. And I wrote that speech probably like 12 times before I came to my mom and I said, I don't really know exactly where to go from here. I gave you all of the meat, so can you please write it? And she goes, sure. And my mom was a professional writer, so at
You had
least
a
I
good
had her.
influence there, huh? You had someone that was able to help you in that regard.
Yeah, and I'm so thankful. And then after it was successfully written, it was about 6 months out from my TED Talk, I would say, and I had to now memorize it word for word, 9 minutes flat, no more, no less. And I just started memorizing it and memorizing it and memorizing it. My mom helped a lot. My mom and dad, but mostly my mom helped a lot in motivation to do that, and do it more than I thought. And I remember about 2 weeks before my TED Talk, I was literally in New Zealand for a family vacation, and my mom was like, give your TED Talk. And like we were literally in the middle of nowhere, New Zealand, in a field of sheep, and I was giving my TED Talk. And now I look back and I'm like, that's actually a really cool fun fact about myself. But yeah, and I just had it down, and I had it down to where I could literally recite it in my sleep. And that's not a joke. I was at a sleepover with my friend, and she was like, you scared me last night. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, you were reciting your TED Talk while you slept, and you did the whole entire thing. And so at that moment, I knew I did it. I accomplished what I came here to accomplish, but I was, yeah, it was cool. And then giving the TED Talk, I mean, it kind of goes back into me kind of acknowledging that I'm an inspiration. Like, I was in a room full of highly educated experts in their field, doctors, and people that had overcome circumstances that I thought were crazy. And I was just 17 on varsity tennis. And so I thought I shouldn't be there. And so that was like the weirdest part for me. And then just giving the TED Talk, I was able to give it exactly how I'd practiced, because I practiced with every emotion, every circumstance, anything that was thrown my way I could handle and do it. And so I did. And so when I came out of it, I think the biggest thing I learned was persistence. Like, it kind of went back to tennis. Like, you do it until you have it down pat. And like my backhand, like I got it down to where I could hit it no matter the emotion I was having in my head, the position on the court I had, the speed or the spin of the ball. Like, I could hit it. And
that's awesome. The story you told, how you presented it, the authenticity and encouragement behind it. I've shared that video with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have just been blown away by that perseverance at such a young age. It's unbelievably inspirational. And on the flip side of that coin, as we can be real, I know that since college and to today, you've often felt like you're not inspirational. And it's really neat to me because it kind of uncovered this other passion you have that kind of puts you in the middle of not being an inspiration, not being a failure, but just being. And that's photography. Tell me more about this passion you have to get out and fishermen waders on the water with a thousands and thousands of dollars worth of camera and just be in nature and take photos.
Yeah, that passion of mine stemmed from the same friend that introduced me to Young Life. We went out to have kind of a friend date and take pictures for fun outside, and I fell in love with everything about that experience. I fell in love with making her feel beautiful in the frame, being in the outdoors, and just realizing that this this action of me taking pictures would not only make the moments last forever, but also there was so much spirit and friendship in that moment that I just wanted to do that for the rest of my life. And so I just started doing it as a hobby. I was like, let me go take pictures. Do you want to go take pictures? And then I tried to start a business in Gunnison and Crested Butte. And I did, sort of. And then I dropped out of school and moved to Texas and didn't pursue it anymore. But it's still a passion.
For now. Yes.
Well, not really. I would say that I have started again. But I was like, I love photography. I would love to do it, but I don't know what my niche would be. And I was like, I love the outdoors, and I found that in college. Like, I love fishing, and I just recently fell in love with hunting, and I also love people. So how does that all intertwine with also not having a college degree? And it's hunting and fishing photography. And so that's my future goal, I guess. I'm going out to Montana actually tomorrow to work on my portfolio and talk with people that would make it possible.
That's awesome. And I think that's really a neat part of your story, Peyton, is that you've been able to come across these passions at both respective levels of inspiration and not feeling like an inspiration. And that's one thing that I'll always encourage you, is that it's okay sometimes just to be, right? And when we're present in that mindset, it's amazing what opportunities come from it. So I'm really excited for that trip you're going on and what's ahead.
I do have to put, though, being in fast-moving water with a $1,000 camera is my hesitation doing this. I'm not the best on balance-wise, and so
I was going to say, what's harder, a cross-handed forehand or holding a camera in water?
I think it would be holding the camera, but we can overcome it.
Absolutely. Your endowment. That's one of the main reasons why I wanted you on today. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about your endowment and just the history behind it and what you're looking to accomplish?
Yeah. So Peyton's Hope is an endowment fund through the Children's Hospital for brain tumor research. We being my parents and I, co-founded it when I was 12. We had already used the name Peyton's Hope for the Brain Tumor Society walk that Denver had every year, and we always had a team for. But when the tumor came back abnormal, because my tumor was not supposed to grow back, and it was considered cancer, they asked to sign it over to brain tumor research, and I signed the piece of paper, and it was scribbles. So if anyone looks at it, I'm sorry. I knew what I was doing, but we decided to do Peyton's Hope, and in 2011, I gave a speech at my doctor's chair endowment dinner. And that meant he had raised $2 million for an endowment, and that $2 million stays with the Children's Hospital forever. And he got a little shadow box on the wall of the Children's Hospital with a chair in it of his choosing, and it was basically nationally recognized. When we started the endowment, I was like, I want to be a chair. My parents said, okay, let's do it. And we have done events since then till recently, and we've raised, I think it's $480,000. I could be wrong or a little off.
It's no chump change, by the way.
Thanks. I'm looking to do an event here in a few weeks, just a small one. But yeah. And so my goal is to be an endowment fund for $2 million and to have a blue ski lift, which my mom thought I was totally insane because I was a tennis freak when I said that. She's like, why do you don't want a tennis bench? I'm like, nope, I want a blue ski lift. And she's like, okay.
That's awesome.
And the weirdest thing is that in college, I decided to go to a college without tennis and where there was skiing. Like the second day of me being in college, I saw a blue ski lift. And it was just like it was a reminder that I shouldn't forget about Peyton's Hope, and where I was at that exact moment was where I needed to be. And I mean, that propelled me into who I am today, that whole college experience, and has basically allowed me to pursue Peyton's Hope now.
That is so awesome. And as I mentioned, I'll have more information on where you can donate to the endowment within the podcast description. And let's help Peyton accomplish this goal. You know, she has been going after big goals and big dreams her entire life. And this one impacts a whole lot of people's lives besides her. And I think that's really the mission of the BTB project, and more importantly, the mission of life is we're all here to help one another. So let's certainly go after that. Last couple questions for you, Peyton. This one, I know it's tough to answer, but we've covered your childhood, we've covered the present, but when life is all said and done, what do you want people to remember about you the most?
That is also a hard question for me to answer. I want to leave a legacy, but when people think about me, I guess I would put it this way. When people think about me, to remember to always keep going. Because life throws you curveballs, and it's messy and hard. And everybody's walk with it is different, but that's not an excuse not to keep going. And when you keep going, you find your purpose and potential. And it drive you a little bit off the road sometimes, but it always comes back to the greatest thing that you could ever imagine. And I also, in that too, to never put your identity in anything except for Jesus Christ. If you do put your identity in something other than him, it causes a void, and when it leaves, you're left with a hole and a loss of identity. But if it's in Jesus, it'll always be steadfast, and it'll always propel you forward. Those would be like the two things that I would say now as 24 to my legacy.
Absolutely beautiful. And that just leaves me with one last question, as I know we've covered a lot today in our conversation, but is there anything that you'd like the listeners to know, or is there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to fill them in that you feel would be important to share today?
I think that the last things I would share would be it's important to be vulnerable with each other and find a community where you can do that. And just to be strong, fight hard, dig deep. I guess I would leave you with those words.
Powerful words. You know, it is not a unreasonable thing to think that, you know, our faith, our journeys, as we've, you know, tried to pursue something greater than ourselves, that it's brought us back together in this moment. And it's been a tremendous honor to spend some time with you, to have the listeners get to know you and how we know each other, and so many takeaways, so many nuggets for folks to hold on to as they navigate their own journey. So I thank you for that. Awesome time. It's always great to catch up with you, and I look forward to continue to do life together. These episodes are just the beginning. What a fantastic first interview for the Built to Be Project. I look forward to continuing to provide insightful, encouraging, motivating content that can help each and every one of you as you navigate life. Impossible is nothing. Sky's the limit. And we're all in this together. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to the next one.